Live. We're live, I think. Where's the recorder? Yes,
There.
we are live. There's timing. Like earlier, I said I hate technology because I don't know how to use it, and I definitely don't know how to fix it. But very happy to have and excited to have Doug Lawrie from Focus Golf Group. Lots to talk about today about golf and coaching, in particular kids, as you are an expert. Coming not world, you're probably world class already, but known to more masses. Now, the first thing, I got to get off on a tangent right away.
Oh, no.
Because as I was doing my homework on you and meeting you at Open Forum a couple weeks ago, I tell everyone when they said they saw the post, coming soon, they said, "Where'd you guys meet?" I said, "We met at the barbershop."
Exactly.
So,
You
I
got
said,
it,
"No,
man.
yeah, we met at Open Forum, but meeting there, all of us had you and Jason and myself, we all had the Air Jordan, the AJ ones, but your shoe game is next level. I mean, you're up
Oh,
there
never.
with Pat Perez. I mean, you and Pat Perez could have a challenge on a reality show about shoe game."
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And the shoe game came about because I have an enormous foot. Like my foot started at 13, went to 14. Now I'm in a 15.
Jeez, you're
And
going the
now
wrong way.
I know it's going like I think I'm shrinking because my feet are getting longer. There you go. Um, the interesting thing about that is I needed shoes, and you can't find 15s up here that aren't a million miles wide and don't look good. So thank goodness to Nike, they let you design your own shoes. So I'm on the Nike app one day and I'm just like, they customize, and I'm like, okay. So I go through it and I see size 15s and I'm like, amazing. I've always wanted a pair of Dunks. So started designing a pair of Dunks, and then one led to four. and and I've got some pretty fun, like I had a Paisley pair that are just amazing. They stop traffic, and it's really kind of fun because a really cool thing about this is my kids that I coach, they all know I like to do this. So I was online with one of my girls, and I was getting her to help me design this shoe. And long story short is she loves cotton candy ice cream, and that is the worst flavor on the face of the planet. And I give her a hard time about that because it's not really ice cream. Anyways, so she designed a pair of Air Force Ones that look like cotton candy, beautiful blue and pink. What she didn't realize is that I was actually getting her design her own shoes for her birthday because it was pretty special. She's been a student of mine since she was 7, and she's going off to college, and I wanted to get her something really special for her birthday. And so she was designing her own shoes. And so, I mean, but yes, it's so addictive. I'll sit on there and just start making shoes up. And my wife's like, if you buy another pair of shoes, I'm throwing the other ones out. I'm like, okay, I got to stop.
Well, you are, as I said, you're world class in what you do, and you're 2020 PGA Canadian Teacher of the Year. That quite an accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're also 2012. You got the junior Canadian
junior golf leader for Canada. Yeah.
And you're a master teacher with U.S. kids, so very accomplished with kids, and we're going to get into a lot of that today. But you have a very, very interesting story on how you got into coaching kids, where you had taken what I could tell the traditional path of golf, and then had a setback, or what appeared to be probably at the time a devastating setback. It's like, what the hell is going on here? And I'll shut up now and let you be the storyteller.
Well, you and I were touching on this before we started, that failure is, and I mean, I remember reading John Maxwell's Failing Forward. And it is by far one of my favorite books because if you're not failing every day, you're not learning. But the failure I had is, yes, traditional golf pro trajectory of assistant pro, associate pro, head professional, director of golf, and then towards a GM role. And, I took this GM role in 2010 that I thought was the best. I mean, they sent more money my way than I'd ever seen, gave me a car, all these things. Well, 49 days in, I presented the strategic plan for the club. They loved it. 5 days later, they took the plan, canned me, put me on my front doorstep with my boxes, and I didn't know what to do. Now, the interesting thing there is I had always coached golf. I always taught golf. I always actually had a good relationship with juniors. And the interesting thing was there was a range in my town just up the street from me, and I went and approached those guys and asked if I could teach because that's what I could do. And I was a married father of 2 and needed to needed to keep making money, and
Yeah, you got to
wasn't
put food on the table.
exactly, put food on the table. So I put my nose down and started teaching, and that went for about 2 years, and then I was really thinking I needed to get back into being a head pro or a GM. But then I had this amazing opportunity come drop in my lap where I got to work with this business coach, Jim Carlisle. He wrote a book called AIM, and he was an executive business coach and search. He would be hired by our association in the PGA of Canada to find directors of golf, but he also did it in the corporate world. And his book was amazing, and not to mention he lived in Oakville, which I live in Burlington, right beside each other, and so I got to spend time with him. And he invited me up to his club up north, about 2.5 hours away, this place called Big Win Island. Now you take a boat to get to this island. It's a beautiful, beautiful
Mm,
golf course. So I got to go up and spend the day with him one day, and then he needed a ride home to Oakville. So in actual fact, I got to spend about 8 hours with him,
mm,
and it was during that time we're on the range, and there were these young kids on the range, and I just gravitated towards them because I like to help kids out, and I was kind of just kibitzing around with them, and we're driving back to the clubhouse, and he stopped the cart so fast I nearly fell out, and he stops and he looks at me and he goes, "That's what it is." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "I just had a vision of you being the Pied Piper of junior golf." I said, "That's what you need to do." And what was really cool is for the rest of the day, we talked about how that looked. And so from there, I went to the guys at the range. I put in a proposal. They said, "Yep, let's go." I took U.S. Kids certification. John Godwin was amazing in that, and John Bryan. And he said something about the minute John put his junior coaching as the forefront and dropped all the adults, his life changed. And I said, that's what I need to do. And as soon as I did that, that's exactly what happened. It just opened up doors. A couple of people that I can say that really helped me with that. One is Kate Tempesta. Kate Tempesta from New York City is probably the best ECE coach for kids age 3 to 5 on the planet. I was the first certified, I would say, person to teach early birdies in Canada.
mhm.
And it allowed me to build development programs that started at 3 to 5 and went all the way up. And it just started feeding it. And it was great. So I mean, right from there, I mean, U.S. Kids, I had kids that performed and played in the World Championships, and it was just one of these things. I think my ability to build relationships with these kids really helped just nurture this. And I mean, soon I was caddying at the World Championships, and one of my girls won two back to back at the age of 10 and 11, and and I got awards for being top 50 coach, and it started just keeps snowballing from there. And so you look back and you go, sometimes when your darkest days are right there in front of you, you have to look past it to really push through, and not let it keep you down,
Mhm.
because you know what, if it's what you love to do, and I mean, golf is something that came to me very late in life, like in college, but I really loved the fact that it was I wanted to be a teacher, but it's so funny, I'm actually doing more now in a sport, um you know 14 years later, than and doing exactly what I want to do, which is just crazy to me.
It's interesting how I always revert back to the Steve Jobs. I think it was at the Stanford graduation when he did the addressment speech, and
Mhm.
I think it was that. Someone could tell me if I'm wrong. I'm sure they will. But when he said, connecting the dots, when he got fired from Apple, and then he didn't know what he was going to do, and then he started what the hell was the other computer company that Apple ended up buying, and then he goes on to work with the guys at Pixar or that Catmull, and then they Disney buys them, and then Apple hires them back. The whole trek of Steve Jobs' story. But he said you can never connect the dots going forward. You can only connect them going backwards, and it's so true. Your stories like that. I had on a local fella, Mick Colella, and the Colella family owned the local. It was Nevada Bob's in the '80s, and then they
Oh
went
yeah.
to Golf Headquarters was the corporate name that they had. But they had owned a gift shop, and Mick used to go around because he was a golf nut, and he would buy all these, as we were talking about whipping drivers earlier,
Yeah.
back in the old days, he would go around to all these garage sales, and there's a number of church organizations here that have donations. So he would buy all these clubs, and he'd self-teach himself how to do club repair. And he had all these golf clubs in the office. His mom tripped over one and she hurt her leg and they had to take her to the doctor, and she came back and she's fine. When she got back a couple of days later, she took all the golf clubs from the office and put them on the floor of this card shop. Well, it didn't take too long that people started saying, hey, how much are those golf clubs? And so he's doing club repair and golf sales. And pretty soon in his little side deal, he's doing more than the family's doing in cards and knickknacks and gifts on Hilton Head. So they're looking at the spreadsheets and they say, hey, maybe we should shift over and get into golf. And they didn't. And they had the golf shop here for almost 40 years. So
Wow.
it's great to hear things like that when you have something that gives you a life pivot and you don't know why.
Exactly.
I think that's kind of how I got into this podcast. Is I was very fed up with golf when I got done playing. I'd worked so hard at it, and back trouble and a bunch of other things sidelined me. And I was so mad at the world, the golfing world in particular, the golf gods. But they knew better. And now, here it was. Many years later, I started a podcast. But all the people I had met along the way, and then they introduced me, like Jason introduced us at the Open Forum, and it just grows from there. And you don't know until you're doing it. And then again, you look backwards and you connect those dots saying, oh my God, how could I be so foolish to not see it? But you can't see it going forward. Very hard.
Very hard. It's very, very hard. You're if you can utilize those dots to help you move forward, I mean, that's I think that's super important, because your lessons, right? Failing forward. We talked, John Maxwell's book is, by far like one of my favorites, because, you need to continuously move forward, and failure is just teaching you every single day. And you know what? Because it just allows you to, improve yourself
Mm-hmm.
and make it better. And you know what? If you're honest and you admit your mistakes and you say, look, I messed up, and okay, well, how do we redo this? Let's regroup and keep moving forward. I think sometimes right now, and that's a message I try to get across to my kids, because golf, you're going to fail way more than you're going to succeed. And I try to explain that to the kids that I coach, because they they think because they work so hard that the reward should be instant, or the reward should be infinite, or not infinite, but like absolute, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I work this hard, I should win or shoot low scores. I'm like, well, what do you like, where's the math? Help me understand the math on this, because yes, you have the opportunity to shoot low scores, but then what are you allowing you to control you to that's preventing you from doing that? And it's those conversations often they don't really get to or understand, because their brain is thinking just this and this. And failure, this game is just full of failure, and it's really about understanding, like, okay, well, if you have a Mount Everest over there to climb, what's your route, what's your roadmap? And that's what came out of in my juniors when I started working with these kids, is building them a roadmap into junior golf so they can chase their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And that roadmap has to have, you have to work on that roadmap with their parents, with them, and you help steer that, because it's vital if they're going to actually make if they want to play golf in college, or whatever it is they want to do with golf. There has to be some direction. How are you going to get to go where you want to go if you don't have a map to get you there?
Yeah, I think first you have to determine or get them to determine where they want to go. Obviously, they're going to
Exactly.
come to you and say, "I want to win the Canadian Junior. I want to win the U.S. Amateur. Or I want to get a college
Mhm.
scholarship." But I think if a coach is not asking their junior that comes to them or that they're working with, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to just play golf with your friends? Fine, we'll get you better. Do you want to get a scholarship? Do you want to win your city championship? Tell me more about what you want to do, because I can't make that plan as you described it without knowing where we're going. We're not throwing darts at a world map and saying no.
Right? It's like, I mean, come on. I gotta tell this story, because one of my best friends, Jason Fairfield, he's probably been one of the biggest influences on like, helped me from the business side of golf and stuff like that. Right? Been amazing. And we worked at a golf course together. He was on the turf side. I was on the pro side. But he said this to me. He goes, he calls it the Mount Everest story, right? And I love saying this to asking kids. I said, you know, can we hop in a car, drive to the airport right now, fly to Nepal, hire a Sherpa, and go climb Mount Everest. And they look at me. I said, they're like, no. I said, no. I said, you know why? Um, no. I said, because we'll die. I said, we
It's a
will
good reason.
die. We don't have a plan. We don't have the right supplies. We don't have a route. We don't have any clue on how to climb a mountain. And it's a bazillion degrees below zero. And so we got to figure out how to get there. And I mean, the really cool part about this story is because it's like everybody who like has a goal of where they want to go with this game of golf, right? Hey, that's your Mount Everest. But like if you don't plan that route properly, your dream's going to die.
Hmm.
And it's just going to stay a dream. James Clear James Clear of Atomic Habits, right? One of the best lines that, you know, goals, right? We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our system, right? If we don't have a system, we can't achieve the goals. The goals are just dreams. And I mean, that's so perfect for these kids because they don't realize what the system is to help them get to their dreams,
Hmm.
right? There's a lot of different things that go into this, right? From practice plans, having a facility, having a coach, having supportive parents, having a club, having a schedule, fitness, nutrition. There's so many aspects to this that these kids don't realize that go into this. And when you put it out on a board for them and they understand what this looks like, well, now it starts becoming a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, I used to tell a lot of kids that as you mentioned, kids working hard and they think the results should come simply because they've sacrificed or they
Mhm.
were uncomfortable and they've made treks up that down that path or up that mountain. And I said the best analogy for kids I can come up with, especially if their mother is a good cook, which most of them are. And I does your mom make the best? Tell me what she makes the best of, and it's apple pie or cookies or lasagna, whatever it is. And I say, okay, does your grandma make good lasagna? Well, yes, she makes good, but not as good as mom's. I say, yes, but your mom knows the recipe exactly. And that recipe might change a little bit based off she's done it long enough. Like my grandmother used to make apple pie and I'd watch her and she wouldn't measure anything. She'd grab and put more flour in or more sugar, more whatever. And it was, she could tell, I mean, by the time she was my grandmother in her 60s or 70s, she had done it for 60 years since she was a kid. And
Right.
she could just tell based off the time, what she felt experience the failure. I mean, I'm sure she failed enough as we were talking about failure making apple pies that weren't quite what she wanted. And I ask him these questions and I say, you can do all these things that we talked about. You can go to the gym, you can eat right, you can hit balls till your hands bleed, and you can work on your putting, and you can know how to do all those things. But when it comes to performing in a tournament, you're going to have to know when to employ each of those things at the right time. Just knowing them and knowing how to do them is not enough. Not to get to the level you want to. Knowing exactly when to, maybe not the exact second, but exactly when to apply it. So if you're nervous on one tee, okay, go back to your routine. If you're not
Mhm.
hitting it the way you want to, what are your defaults in your swing that we know you fall into, and then here's how to change them. So implementing those things at a particular point in time is when you become next level good, and then you can play it, Division 1 versus Division 3, or
Mhm.
pro versus not pro, or mini tour versus tour. That's the difference in the integration aspect of all these things that we're working on. And they look at you like, how am I ever going to do that? And you got to remember when we started 6 years ago and you couldn't do this, and you couldn't do this, like as we talk about looking backwards, because they don't either. And they're like, it kind of, I think they just life lessons. They start to realize, wow, I wasn't good at this, and I did work at it. Now I'm good at it, and I can do the next thing that's even harder.
Mhm.
It's just the growth of an individual, using golf as the tool.
Oh, it's such a great vehicle to help them grow as an individual. Shaping lives. I mean, because we get the privilege, you and I,
Mm-hmm.
um, we get the privilege of being a pretty big piece of their like they enjoy coming to see us. We have a pretty big role to play for them, and they're trusting us, right? I mean, trust kids, and trust is such a vital thing, and so it's so important as a coach that you realize that it's it's not about it's not about me as the coach. It's not about the parents. This is all about them. And invariably, it's like, if you think about that as a coach, it doesn't matter if they stay or they leave. Okay, because honestly and truly, if you've done everything that you have done the way that you know how to do it, and have done it for these juniors, and they decide they need to go somewhere else, or they need to go and move on, or whatever, that is, you should be able to keep your head up high, because it's not your decision, and it's something that you should feel that, yep, you know what, I did everything I can here, and I've left my mark on these kids, right? And you are treating them with respect, you're treating them, you're being realistic, and it's super important, because often I think we get our egos get in the way, and we think that, when a kid leaves, oh, whatever. But in actual fact is, take a step back again, connect the dots backwards, and think, hey, you know what, that's okay. I've done everything I can for this child, or this teen, this young person, and you know what, I just want them to be successful, because again, this isn't about us. It's about, how do we play a small piece in their journey up Mount Everest, right? And
Mhm.
help guide them the right way.
I've had a number of friends and guests on the show who are very, very. They know Tiger Woods. They work with Tiger Woods. Some way, shape, or form. And I've heard this in rumor, and I don't know if it's true. I didn't ask them to confirm it or not, because I know that many that Tiger works with, he takes their confidence very seriously.
Mhm.
And I think that the people I had on have enough respect for that they wouldn't give information. I wouldn't ask them for it. If it came up in general conversation, that's one thing, but I'm not going to ask them. So, but the rumor that I had heard repeatedly was, when Tiger was a kid, when he was a junior, that after each tournament, whether he won or didn't win, or whatever, however he finished, his dad would make him write down a few things, almost like a journal. It's like, what did you do well? What didn't you do well? And what do you need to do to improve at those things and continue your strengths where they are? And now, could you imagine the kid doing that, as you work with kids on a regular basis, from the time they're 4, 5, 6 years old, their entire life, their entire playing career, 20 years, and now they're 24 and 5, and now they're playing on the PGA Tour. I mean, you have such a firm foundation of uh, being uncomfortable, because you know what you need to work on, and you know what you need to strengthen, and you're doing those uncomfortable things. Jason Sutton's doing the uncomfortable thing challenge right now, and so and it's become prevalent with the Goggins and the Huberman, and talking about the brain development of doing uncomfortable things is a very important aspect of a human being's growth. But I found that fascinating, that a lot of people, and a lot of kids in particular, and coaches, don't want to do that. The kids really want to go out and hit drivers if they're a really good driver. They want to hit irons if they're a good iron. But it's like, you 3-putted 4 times in last tournament. Let's go look at your putting. Can we do this first? Like, it's like they don't want to go do that uncomfortable thing. As
No, they
adults,
don't.
yeah, as adults, we can make them do it, but getting them to understand how it's going to be a benefit to them as they're in their game is very important.
It's that's a great point, because I actually had this exact conversation with my one player, Alexa Ouellette. She and I were talking about practice, and she was self-admittedly, she said, when my chipping's bad, I don't want to go practice my chipping, because I don't want to subject myself to being bad. And I've realized that I was avoiding it, and it wasn't a conscious avoidance. I was just avoiding it because I thought, oh, okay, no, you know what? I don't want to go practice it, because I didn't want to suck. But rather than ask for help, I wanted to try and figure it out for myself. And the really interesting thing is, she said to me, once I figured out that she said I was being an idiot, and I said, I realized that I was avoiding it on purpose. I started to then not avoid it, and that, to me, in that conversation with her, was like, wow, because I've been her coach since she was 7. She's now 17, and it's like the growth that you see, and the
Hmm.
fact that she is able to internalize and realize those things, is massive. So it's interesting because during the bigger events, I will actually FaceTime all my players who are playing in the event after their round if they want it. So it's kind of like debriefing in between during the tournament, before the tournament, during and after. Um, and I text them and I say, "Do you want to talk, even if it's a good or bad round?" Some say yes, some say no. Um, Alexa, Julia, a couple of the guys, Aiden, Matt, we will we will often just touch very little on the tournament and then talk more about how they're feeling. And it's gotten to the point where it's more of a check-in on them, on and planning for the next day of what the weather's like or something like that. It's not really worrying about anything from the standpoint of what can I do better. It's more like I'm kind of like the shrink, right? I'm like they're on the couch and they're just saying a few things, and it's a really cool thing because my wife's like, "Hey," I said, "Hey, gotta go make a few calls. I'll be back." Right, and it's like an hour will go by, and she goes, "Well, that wasn't very quick." And I said, "Well, kind of got on a little bit of tangent, but anyways, I love my wife. Yes, Susie, I love you. Anyways, but it's gotten to the point where that is almost an important piece that they all look for because it's that constant of just checking in. It's not me. It's not. I'm not. I don't. I don't ever. I don't come at it from I'm not being critical. I'm asking them questions more so than anything. I'm asking them and trying to self discover, have
They got
them
to
self
extract
discover.
it, pull it out of them.
Right. Exactly. Right. And then cue them a few things about breathing and nutrition. I had this one young boy. He got heat stroke twice this year, and he literally, I'm literally said to him, water is essential to life, right? And he's like, yeah. I mean, the kid's 80 pounds, right?
Yeah,
And
your
I'm
body's
like,
only about 80% water.
right. And I'm like, Ben, this is the simplest and easiest thing for you to fix. And it was interesting. I did this with another young lady who wouldn't eat, and then she'd crash on the last 6 holes. Well, the tournament she decided to eat, she played her best. And she kind of, that was the buy-in finally, right? She goes, "Doug, if I eat in the morning, I feel like I'm going to throw up." I said, "I don't care. Find something that's not going to let you throw up. Drink a protein drink. Do
Mhm.
something that I don't really care that you feel like you're going to throw up. That's not my problem. My problem is that you don't want to eat, and it's messing up with your golf game because you aren't putting any energy into your body." "I know, but you know what? Well, listen, fix it, because it's if you want to play high level golf, sorry, if you want to play high level golf, this has to be fixed. It's not even it's not even a just, it really isn't
Non-negotiable.
negotiable, non-negotiable." Yeah, exactly. So crazy.
At this time of year, and kids their attention can get move in different directions very quickly. And
Hmm.
I hope to talk to you about that as we talked in the pre-show. But this time of year, like down here, if you're teaching juniors, it's fairly easy. We're off Hilton Head. I think I'm 3 miles from Jason's house. I'm about a mile and a half from Andrew Rice, and I could, almost hit a couple drivers. Well, maybe more than a couple if they're a mile and a half, and hit half a dozen top 100 coaches in our area. It's
Sure.
very, very cool spot to be. But one of the things is, our weather, it's going to be in the mid to upper 60s today. So if we're working with juniors at all, it's very easy because they'll call up, or we'll have time set. We'll look at the calendar. We'll look at the forecast. Okay, we're going to get together here, 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 and then it's going to get colder. It's going to rain or do this. But obviously up in Canada, you're in a different scenario. So when kids have long months of time that are off season, how do you make sure that they maintain at least some focus on the goal that you sat down with them, that they said that they wanted, and implementing, uh, keeping them on a pathway, even if the pathway might be slowed during your off season?
Great question. I think it's essential as being up here that our golf courses typically close around and middle of November, and probably won't open till the middle of April. So that's a good 5 months of lack of activity. Now, COVID, and the one thing that came out of COVID was really positive up here in Canada, is a lot of kids got indoor hitting ability. So a lot of them converted garages, put up nets, can swing it year round. I myself share an indoor studio that I've built with my cousin and another my other teaching assistant, and we have a great, 3 bays, a couple track bands, all this stuff. So the really cool part about this is you I set up basically with with my kids a schedule, and it's like, okay, what's your time? This is what it is. Here's your weeks. This is what we're doing. And then we always start off with the window pane roadmap process that I have developed, where it looks into their season, the gems, the opportunities, gems, the things they want to continue doing that they've done well, and then the opportunities that they found from this year that they could do better. What are their goals, and then what is their system? And you know, this is the great jump off point, right? Because if they want to get stronger, okay, then we talk about fitness, and I have some great fitness professionals around to leverage to help them with that. Some of my kids, so I have two boys here in Toronto are members of Team Canada on the junior national squad. Two of my boys, they will be on grass every month. They will go down south
Hmm.
to camps. Team Canada hosts camps in Arizona. They have a in Phoenix, and they'll go down and they'll spend anywhere from 4 days to a week in training. Team Ontario, there's so the Golf Association of Ontario, Golf Ontario, they have a team of boys and girls that they will do training at a facility here during the winter, and then they will also take them on trips. Like right now, the team is down at the IJGA Academy in Orlando, doing some training. So they have they have a head coach, they have a chiropractor trainer, and they also have a mental coach that goes down and they do training for those kids. And those are the upper class elite players in the province, boys and girls.
Hmm.
And then in my academy, I have a constant array. I have an online Wednesday nights. I have about 10 of my athletes are taking a online mental training course that runs all winter. And we do a multitude of things, from practice to lessons and rejigging any holes in their game, and then just trying to set some. And the really cool thing is we kind of work towards what's coming up next month in March. I have 2 weeks where I'm going to have about 30 of my kids. Now, when I say 30, I don't coach all 30. There's some that are coming from my other two coaches that work with me. So we go down to the Duran Golf Club in Vieira. Justin Blazer, very good friend of mine, another top 50 coach. Um, he's a great friend, and I've been down there. This is going to be our 5th year, and it's a great facility. It's got a double-ended range. It's got a chipping green. It's got a putting green. It's got a par 3 course. So it allows
Sweet.
for a multitude of training opportunities, and we split the kids into groups, and we play every day and train every day. So they really look forward to this. It's gotten so good as the second week. This is going to be the repeat of most of the kids in the second week. Uh, they put it all together. They made a whole Ryder Cup. They did a draft. They did teams. They've got scramble for 2-man scramble matches first day, 2-man best ball matches second day, variation scramble on the third day, alternate shot on the fourth day, and then individual matches on the fifth day. Right? Like it's they do a great job because they look forward to it, and it really gives us a great opportunity to check in and see how their games are doing. And so up here in Canada, I think it's or anywhere where it's cold and you're not on grass all the time. I think as a coach, it's super important, if you do have a group of kids, you need to look into taking them even down to Hilton Head, or take them down to Myrtle Beach, or if you have availability to get down to Florida, you know, plan it,
Hmm.
because it just gives them more opportunities to check in on grass and see how they're doing when you're there. Because invariably, if they go on a trip with their parents, or they go play in a tournament, you're not there as the changes that you're working on are maybe happening. And it's super important because they need to have that check-in. They need to be able to come back to you and say, oh man, I wasn't great, or I wasn't good, or oh, those changes are amazing, and I'm hitting it so much farther. But if you're there, it's now you can fix it right there, and now you're in their presence, and you can really see how they're playing. And that gets me down another road of, you always want to be on the course with your players, because you want to see how they're playing. If you're just standing on the driving range, you're just a teacher. You're not a coach. And you got to really, I mean, you got to really get out on the golf course, watch them play in tournaments. That's another thing. And you also have to watch them play with you sitting in, walking with them or sitting in the cart, because you need to know what's going on in their brain.
Yeah, it kind of keeps that structure that they don't just go to mush. I mean, I grew up in Michigan, so I'm just north of Detroit, and
Big Blue. Go
yeah,
Blue. You're no Michigan fan. Just say go Blue. There you go.
Well, I was going to go to Michigan State to play golf, but
Okay.
when I asked them I went to Ferris State, they had the PGM
Ferris State.
program.
Yeah.
And I asked the coach, Coach Horvat, I said, what do you have that would be comparison to the Ferris program? He said hotel management. And as soon as he said that, I said, I'm not going to Michigan State because there's no way I'm going into hotel management. I have no desire to have people yell. Now, here was my ignorant rationale as a 17-year-old. I said, there's no way I'm going into hotel management because I don't want people complaining to me all the time. So let me go into the golf business. If I don't make it playing, I'm going to have people yelling at me all the time.
Right, exactly. What do you mean I'm late for my tee time? Can't you get me out? Oh my gosh, the guys in front of us are so slow. They played in 4 hours.
Why did you not make them go fast? Geez,
right.
I don't know. Maybe because not telepathy. I can't get in their head.
No kidding, eh? Oh my gosh.
This is, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people want to know about this one because this is a constant issue, especially in today's world, and that's helicopter parents. How do you, Doug Lawrie, how do you deal with them?
Oh boy. You know what? It's funny. Helicopters are one thing. Lawnmowers are the worst. Really, honestly and truly, I really, really, really try to be straight up and realistic with these parents. If there's too much helicoptering, I ask them politely to, like, I know some coaches, they're like, yeah, parents can't come to a lesson. They're not allowed to sit in the lesson, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I don't say that, but what I'll do is I will say to them that you have to understand that they can't hear too many voices. And it's really honestly and truly the fact that I need autonomy in this. And my parents, I think one of the things I'm a little bit blessed from the standpoint is my parents really let me steer the boat for 95% of my kids. There are probably 5% in probably about 3 parents that I have to be a little bit better, a little bit more firmer with, and really, like, kind of be the expert and say to them, you need to, like. But one of the things I really find that's super important is the parent relationship is important as much as almost as much, maybe not as much, but it is an important part, because they are the ones that are the Uber and the bank. They're the Uber and the bank, right? So setting up a proper schedule is super important, because then, the kids know, like, they need to have proper rest and recovery when they're having tournaments. They can't have a tournament every weekend, blah, blah, blah. It's super important. And for the most part, I have a lot of buy-in with that. With the ones that get lawnmower or helicopter, I mean, mowing everything down in front of your kid and, like, trying to actually, not have any adversity. I will literally say to them, you need to stop. Because you know what? If you just let it go, this kid's not going to learn anything. And you're literally not allowing them to become, they're literally relying on you. Not you, not me. I mean, the parent. They're relying on you to basically tell them, like, nothing is going to ever be hard. And you are literally trying to control your kid's outcome. And if you continue to do this, then we're not going to be able to work together. And I've only had that conversation once. And it's pretty good, because I don't know what it is. I just get a lot of parents are very, they listen. And I guess maybe because I'm coming from a position of factual, like, history and foundation of success, that they literally will take what I'm saying and say, we need to just be really good about this. So for those who find it hard, like I've had my teaching assistant was having a parent who was just way too involved of trying to make his daughter better, who was 7 at the time.
Hmm.
And like she would come to a lesson completely doing opposite things that he showed her the week before. And I finally said to him, I said, you need to pull the dad aside and you need to say, do not deviate from the things that I give, give your daughter, because you are causing too much problems for the 7-year old. Your 7-year old girl doesn't know who to listen to. She doesn't want to be disrespectful to dad, but it's not helping with me. And he did, and it's worked perfectly. Now the dad will come to the lesson, but he'll just sit on his computer doing some work in the academy, and he's given it completely to my assistant. And I think that's super important because you need to make the establish those lines of communication and understand that, you're coming to me because I am the golf coach. This is my area of expertise. If you have any questions, ask me. I'd be more than happy
Hmm.
to talk to you about it, and let's have a discussion about this. I have one parent. He is literally he I he's been a very long time client and a very big supporter of mine and stuff like that. And I just let him be because there's no sense trying to change that. It's not going to change. So it's like, let's work with it, and let's see how I can work with it, right? And be firm and realistic when I need to be. But I mean, in all honesty, it is what it is. So I mean, I think you pick and choose your battles sometimes.
Do you, when you do the discussion with the kids, where you lay out a plan, like where what do you want to get out of this? What is your goal? What do you want to get to? And we went over that. They want to win their league. They want to win
Right.
or get a
Yes.
scholarship. They want to play professionally, win the Canadian amateur, whatever. Do you have a similar conversation without the child around sometimes with the parent, so that early on, so that if it does get to a point where they're not listening to what the directive you're trying to give, and you can go back and say, look, we need to talk a little bit, and here was what you wanted for your child.
Well, it's funny because I actually don't I don't cause it I don't actually go at it from what do you want for your child, because I come at it from what does your child want, and are we able to create that pathway for them?
Hmm.
Because I want to know what they're like. What do you think about your child's dreams? Because um are you in line with it? I mean, I don't know how many times, and I'm sure you've gotten this as well. You get a parent calling you, "Hey, can you take a look at my kid? This kid, trust me, he's never really had lessons, but people look at him and say he's got something, and
He's going to make the tour.
he's going to make the tour." And you're like, "Sure, okay, let's get together. Let's see what's going on." And it's like you sit there and you're going, in your head, you're like, parent's delusional, has no idea, right? But you never say that out loud, right? But I mean, you have to look at it and you go, okay, so this is what it's going to take, right? Because you and I both have worked with what it takes to get to that level, right? And
Hmm.
meaning you, Pete, and me, not and it's like this is what it's going to take, and it's the realistic chats that you have. But again, I come back to the fact that it's not what they want for their kid. It's what does their child want, and are they able to provide it if they follow this roadmap? If they get out of line on that and they deviate, then you bring them back to the roadmap and the window pane, and you say, this is what we're working on. This is why you share it with their parents. This is your child's wants and needs, right? This is what they want to do. But if you're unable to do this, right? If you're taking a detour somewhere, right? If you're detouring their roadmap, well, that's going to have a drastic effect on the ability to accomplish all this stuff. And you can't do that. So that's where I think I really try to hold them accountable for their child rather than what they want, because their ego and their thoughts are completely different than what the child is a lot of times. And it's super important that they be brought grounded right? You get those parents that are too headstrong and you're not going to tell me what to do with my kid kind of thing and stuff like that. And that's why they don't last very long if I'm coaching
Mhm.
them and stuff, because it's just not doesn't line up. So it's I'm sorry, but you know what? I can't help you. But that doesn't happen very often, but it does.
Yeah, I think even using the tiger example again, and I hate to do that because I don't want to use Tiger for. I mean, he's an anomaly. He's a once in a generation talent, and,
100%.
and everything else. Maybe in a century. But yeah, I remember the story of hearing his dad in an interview when he took him to see Butch Harmon, and they made the decision that they were going to work with Butch. And I don't remember if Earl said it to Butch or Butch said it to Earl, but the agreement between the two was Earl said, "I'm not going to tell you how to coach," and Butch said, "Well, I'm not going to tell you how to parent." And look at what they did. Now, I'm sure that there was maybe a touch of crossover at some point. That there has a little
Has
bleeding
to be
over of Earl
somewhere.
at a tournament saying, "Tiger, do this with your stroke more. Here's what Butch said. You're not doing it." And Butch seeing something in Tiger, maybe they were somewhere and saying, "Tiger, you shouldn't be doing that." But that's bleeding over. That's not staying in your lane,
Hmm.
um, and agreeing to the commitment that the team made. You know, so it's like, well, you can show that to somebody and say, look, here's what the best of all time did. Here's the plan. We know what the blueprint is. So
Hmm.
it's not easy. It's not going to be easy, or everybody would do it. So you have obviously it's your pride and joy. It's the number one thing to you in the world is your child. But if you want your child to be happy, and this is what they say will make them happy, this is what your responsibility is outside of being their provider and protector and everything else.
Hmm. Well, I think I just was listening to uh, a little excerpt out of a podcast from Morgan Hoffman that was uh, interviewing Jack, and Jack was talking about how, and I think I'm gonna come back to the parent thing on this. So there's a reason why you don't see parents on the range at PGA Tour events and college events and the U.S. Junior. And Jack was talking about how Jack Grout came to like 500 of his golf tournaments, but never once set foot on the lesson on the practice tee. And he said, if I ever had a problem and Jack was up in the stands or the bleachers, I'd look at him, I'd go, Jay Grout, what do you see? And he'd be like, check your head position, check your ball position. He would make Jack accountable for what Jack was doing. And Jack was talking about how this came about was having a conversation with Bobby Jones at Augusta, and saying how Bobby Jones was talking about his lean years between the ages of 14 and 21 where he didn't win anything. But Bobby Jones said, I had to be accountable and find my way on the golf course, and learn how to adapt and push through and not run back to my coach Maynard, right? And that was the
Mm-hmm.
same thing what Jack Grout did with Jack Nicklaus. Is he didn't make Jack didn't, like, kids nowadays are so quick to send a video to their coach and say, hey, look, what's wrong? And accountability, and this is what Jack was saying, is I would be in a tournament and I wouldn't like the way I was swinging it, and I'd do whatever I needed to be able to make that golf ball do what I wanted it to do, and fix it in the tournament. Whether I won or whether I lost, it didn't really matter. But as long as I was able to correct myself, the accountability and being able to fix it is massive. So when you have parents, right, that understand this is their child's journey, and allow them, and that's what Jack's dad did with him, is he let him figure out his journey, because
Mm-hmm.
Jack was in the school of pharmacy, and his dad came to him and goes, you're not going to be a pharmacist. You need to go play golf. And so Jack admittedly says, this is kind of funny. I didn't know this. Jack says, so I went in, took economics. I hated economics, but I also started working for a life insurance company, and here I am making like, I'm making like $35,000 a year selling life insurance policies to my frat mates who didn't need life insurance policies, and I'm like making all this money, and now I'm gonna go play golf. And it was really kind of funny because, like, back then, the accountability, like Jack's dad made him accountable by going to Jack Grout, taking lessons. Jack Grout said, you know what, fix it, figure it out. right? And so now, with the parents and parents, if you're hiring a coach, let the coach be the coach and empower your kids, right? And when you empower the kids and if you have the right coach, you're going to have a child who is way more able to fix it themselves and be more accountable and self-reliant, because building that in today's youth, where they're not picking this up
Mm-hmm.
and looking for the answer, that's the key. Make them aware of what is going on. Yeah, okay, they can self-evaluate and video their swing and take a look at it. And you know, I try to do that with all my players to say, what are the best versions of yourself? When you're playing your best, do you record that? Do you write it down? So back to what that Tiger story was, right? Write down after the tournament. What were the best parts about the tournament? What did you do? Hey, stats are great, very important to the success of the player. But what were the things you did? And I was talking to Matt Killen at Christmas. I was in the Bahamas at Baker's Bay, and Matt Killen and I were having a little chat, and he was talking about working with Tiger. But the one Tiger story, it's funny we keep coming up with Tiger stories, but I mean, the Tiger story was this. He goes, Tiger turned to him and said, Matt, I could shoot 90. That's going to be the best effing 90 I'm ever going to shoot, because I might not have it, but I'm going to tell you right now, I am committing to every single shot. I'm going to walk off that golf course. I'm going to be 100% committed to every single shot. And Matt's like, really? He goes, yeah. I may not play well, and that's just fine. I can accept not playing well. But if I'm not committed to every single shot, then I'm letting myself down. So when he shanked it yesterday on the 18th hole at Riviera, Tiger, I guarantee you, if you ask him, yeah, I was committed to the shot. It was this kind of shot. Da 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 da. I hit a bad shot. Almost made made an amazing recovery pitch shot, but he's not uncommitted. And I think this all really boils down to, getting back to your original point is, you know, parents have to realize that the reason you want to coach is because they're the expert in whatever sport that is, and you let the coaches be the expert. If you have an issue with them, have a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's super important that if you have an issue, they understand what the issue is. Silence is deadly. If you're assuming something's going on, I would rather have a parent tell me you're being a complete ass to my kid and challenge me on it so we can discuss about it, versus thinking I'm being an ass to his kid, but in actual fact, we're goofing around and he's telling you something that's actually, do you really know the whole story? So it's super important, the communication with a parent, and because you're all a team. And if you don't realize that you're all a team, you're not going to be very successful, because there takes so many parts of it.
Yeah, I agree. I used to tell a lot of the juniors who wanted to play Division I and then go on to pro. I said, "Well, this is um, Lisa Incorporated, or this is Tom Incorporated. This is your company. You're 14 years old, or you're 15 years old, but you are now the CEO of this company. Your mom and dad are, one's a cheerleader, one's the bank, or one's the transportation, one's the
Yep.
bank. I'm the coach, and you need to tell us, where you want to go, where you want to play, and well, they'll tell you, well, we can't do this event because we're the economy's struggling a little bit, but we can do these, and here's where mom can take you, here's where dad can take you, and here's where um Doug's going to coach you to here, and here's what you're going to do with him. And you're right, it has to be a whole plan so that everyone has a direction. Without direction, I mean, you're just, again, closing your eyes and throwing that dart in a dark room and saying, I hope I hit the target, or you're shooting the dart or the arrow, and then you're drawing the target around it. I see that too often, and that false sense of confidence, which equates, in my opinion, to comfort and not being uncomfortable. I think what the story you told about Jack Grout and Jack Nicklaus, that little bit of uncomfortable doesn't allow him to go to his default setting for his comfort zone. Whether it is if a person has a fault of trying to be perfect, or they have a fear of failure, or they have whatever it is that their belief system has been set from the time they were very young. It doesn't allow them to do that. It gives them direction, as we keep alluding to, that you do with all your students, is here's the plan and here's where we're going to go. Here's how you keep your focus on that. And so it doesn't allow the other things to slowly start to ooze in, because things ooze or start to shift just a little bit. And I tell kids, the higher you go, the faster your race car is going, the less it takes to move that off a course. You can go over, if you're driving, idling basically down your side street at 15 miles an hour and you go over a half an inch stick, no big deal. Boom, boom. You do that in a Formula One race car at 195 miles an hour, and you're dead. You're in the
Yes,
wall.
you are.
So
Yes, you are.
it gets multiplied the further you go on, and the deeper you get into your career.
It really does. And I mean, one of the interesting things that I've come across in most recent years was um, a lot of success. So, graph chart is going this way, right? And then plateau, right? Maybe a little down, back up, down. Um, but the when they're going this way and they're going up really fast, and they think that the world's their oyster and stuff like that, it's been very enlightening for me to understand the effect of a couple of things in this junior golf world that I was really unaware of, and part of it is the recruiting process for going to post secondary education, and the effect it has on 15 and 16-year-old brain spaces when they're playing tournament golf.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason I say that is with a number of my players, and I'll give you a really good example of this. So I have a player, very accomplished, had a very big school looking at him, and they basically told him that, and it was really an interesting point because I knew he was having the call, and then he came to practice after the call, and he was a moody little prick. Sorry. That's the base. I'm sorry, but that's basically what it was. He was awful, and he was treating me awful. I pulled him aside because I was just like, "What is going on here?" I pulled him aside. I said to him, "What's going on? Why are you why are you treating me and talking to me like this?" He goes, "What do you mean?" And he didn't really give me an answer, so I just walked away because I was going to deal with it. I was going to sit there if he can't see it, right? But it dawned
Mm-hmm.
on me later that night, and it was because the school that he really wanted to go to had basically said to him, "You need to do this and you need to do that. And if you do those two things, you got a chance. Because really, we really like you, and you're like one of our top recruits, but these things have to happen." And so what happened was, in his 15-year-old brain, he suddenly said, "This is what I have to do." But he was really emotional about it and didn't know how to deal with it. And so I got the brunt of it. And it took about a month for it to be really him to open up about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it and worked it out, and he understood, and so on and so forth. But that's something that I think is really interesting, because for me I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how when they want, they're closer to their Mount Everest of what they wanted to accomplish, and they're putting stipulations on how they can get there. And now that they don't know, as a 15-year-old, and your brain is not developed, I don't care how accomplished you are as a golfer, and how great you are. I The ability to compartmentalize all that stuff and organize it in your headspace as a 15-year-old, when you're basically, trying to achieve something, that's you got to be something special to be able to do that. So, the lack of communication, or the way that he projected, taught me a lot about how this recruiting process really does affect these young people. And to be honest with you, it's horrible. It
It
really
is.
is.
I have not had a kid that I was teaching that was a high school level that enjoyed the recruiting. In fact, the one kid I taught, he said he ended up selecting a school that was in up north, and I said, he'd never lived in a cold hemisphere.
Uh-oh.
And I said, "Are you sure you wanted to go up there? Let me explain to you, as someone who grew up in that." But he said, "Look, I just want this whole process to be over. I hate it." Another girl I was coaching that she was very good. She won the regionals to go to states by like 12 shots. And she was really good. And I asked her dad, I said, she doesn't want to go play college. He said, no, she wants to focus. She wants to be an international attorney. I said, that's great. But if she wants to play, I'll help her get somewhere. So she bypassed that, whether she saw that with her friends or not. But her focus was on, I'm not going to play the LPGA tour. I don't have desire to. This is what I want to do in my life. And she learned what she did in golf and how to. She had very good parents, and the prototypical, as we talked about, if you wanted a parent to do what to be the ideal parent, that's what her parents were. And
No, that's
but
great.
and then she chose to go in academics and then the working world, which was just fine. She used what she learned in golf in her career. But yeah, I've not met a kid who enjoyed that recruiting process.
Yeah, no, I'm I've had a couple of interesting journeys this past year. Both with like um, a young man who played his best golf this year, didn't have a great year the year prior, but like schools kept taking passes on him, and it's like, and we're sitting here scratching our heads, right? And marks are amazing, trending in his play, thinking that, hey, you know what, you want somebody who's trending, right, and working upwards, right? Has a gap year and is showing independence of working in another country away from his parents and being responsible, and you know is that not just like college? Yes, it is. It's like I've got all this like the sum isn't equaling the means, right? And it's just, it was crazy. So I mean, I really learned a lot from a coaching standpoint on the effect of this recruiting stuff on the kids' psyche, and how they, some have it easier, some have it harder, some have it enjoyable, and some know what they want. But you really have to take a step back as a coach and really see, because if you know that player and you can see little differences in how they are, you have to be able to ask that question to them and to find out, hey, is everything okay here? Because you know they may be really down, and as much as I'm not saying it's a hot button or something, but mental health in these young people nowadays is so important,
Hmm.
because they have so many things coming at them. Social media, results, comparisons, all that stuff. It's really important that you're very in tune with who they are as a young person, because if you can see if they're struggling and stuff, and you can be that person that can ask, hey, you know what? You're their safety net, and being able to help them that way, it's so super important. So yeah, it's I'm I'm way more versed and way more educated now on this, on that recruiting side of things, that I guess learning every day to be better.
Doc McCabe talked about that when he was on. That and we're all about the same age. When we were young, playing sports in the 70s and 80s, even early 90s, you knew who was good in your town, maybe the counties around you. Maybe if you were really into it, you knew who was good in your state, in another part or in another, province or wherever you're at. But nowadays, kids know who's good on the other side of the country, or even in another continent. And they know their statistics of other kids, and they're comparing themselves to these kids. And all we had to do was play, which was a blessing in disguise. Whether not, the downside is we weren't pushing. Maybe if we needed to push ourselves more, and we didn't, guilty as charged. Just okay, I'm winning. I'm one of the better ones in my area. That's good enough. And so there are two sides to every coin. But some of these kids today, they're in the information age, that they're too much into it. How do you coach your kids to maybe put the phone down sometimes, or not worry about what somebody else is doing, because they have no control over that? If there's a kid, in Vancouver that's
Oh,
shooting lights out and he's winning every tournament, and that's going to be their competition for the Canadian
Oh,
amateur, the Canadian junior. How do you get them to not maybe focus as much or know that they're already out there?
the really honestly, that's oh, man, this is such a great question because you really can't. And I don't mean that in terms of like you can ask them. I mean, there's some that just won't. But my biggest thing is to get them to understand they're playing the golf course. Um, don't worry about who you're playing against. And let's just go beat this golf course because the golf course is consistent and it's sitting there saying, "Yeah, come beat me." And if you go beat the golf course the best that you can't control what everybody else is doing. And I'll give you a really, really cool thing. So at the U.S. Junior this year, I got to meet um, TK. I can never pronounce his last name because it's too long. Ratchanon from Thailand. TK and my one player Eric Zhao played in the final group at the British Junior Boys U16. TK came second. Eric came third. TK won a Asian Tour event at the age of 15.
Mm.
Which is like his Wagger was like 13th. TK, so I get to meet TK. We play in a practice round with TK, and he had just come back from making the semifinals of the British Am. Right? I mean, wow. Like I'm like thinking this guy is like, he's something else, next level. And we go and we play. And the thing, a really cool part is Eric doesn't, Eric thinks he's good, but Eric also is good friends with him, and they're buddies. And they were goofy 15, 16-year-olds during the whole practice round.
Kind of cool to see.
It really was. I mean, he was giving me shots. Like he was joking with me. We had a really good practice round. What a really nice kid. A lot of respect. Very well spoken. Just a really nice kid. So much so, like, so first round, Eric shoots 1 under, great. TK shoots 5 over.
Mm.
I'm like, we're all like, what? So it's like, okay, second round. Okay. Eric goes out and he doubles 16 to go to 3 over, and the cut is the playoff's gonna be 2. So to get into match play for the junior, it's gonna be 2, it looks like. So Eric goes out, double 16 to go to 3 over, makes a 30-footer on the last roll on 17 to get to 2. 18, he's got 270 to the flag, and he's got to fit it through a chute between water and a tree and over a fairway bunker. Par 5, hits the 3-wood of his life. I'm standing with the assistant coach from Texas. And he goes, "Oh, he's going for it, coach." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, he is." Hits it on the front of the green. My nerves went from elation to tears to excitement to oh my gosh. Puts it on the front of the green, 2 putts for birdie, gets to one over, gets right into match play. TK, we're like, oh my gosh, he's going to miss it, right? No, he shoots 5 under. Birdie's 18 to shoot 5 under. Or no, sorry, shoot 3 under to get to 2 over, right? Goes to the playoff the next morning, right? Hits it to, no, misses. They're all playing this par 3, and there's 14 guys for 7 spots. He hits his tee shot and kind of pulls it over the bunker. He's standing like the ball's below his feet, and he chips it to a foot, makes par. 7 guys made par, 7 guys make bogey. They go to match play. That showed me something.
Mm-hmm.
What? But did Eric sit there and get starstruck when he was playing the practice round because he's playing with this guy TK who won No, he didn't. It's his buddy. And the really wild thing is that he knew like TK can play golf because he's seen it firsthand. But one of the things was like he just had a bad day the very first day. Now, did he clutch up as Eric clutched up? They totally did. But
Mm-hmm.
it's getting them to realize like that you're as good as you want to be, and I don't care who the guy is, right? You're standing here at the U.S. Junior. there's a reason why you're at the U.S. Junior. So put that aside and focus on what you got to get done. And it was really cool. Is it, like, so getting back to what you're saying is you can't control whether or not they look at these guys and they think these guys are amazing, right? Like Miles Russell and a couple of these other kids. Like Miles Russell's 15 and this like had an unbelievable season in the AJGA, right? Like Player of the Year, all that stuff, right? And he's phenomenal. He's 15, right? In grade 10, and he's like in 10th grade, and I'm like, wow, this kid's like amazing. And it's like these kids all do it in their own way, but I don't know if you're playing high level golf, if you're looking at somebody saying, oh, I'm in this tournament and there's no way I'm winning this, because on any given day, I mean that great movie with Al Pacino, right? Or on any given Sunday,
Again, Sunday, yeah.
right? I mean, any given Sunday, you can get it done because you can't control what all the other players are doing. Control what you're doing.
Hmm.
And I think that's the biggest message that I try to get across to all these guys, is that you can't control what everybody else is doing. So just control yourself and do your best, right? And invariably, it's the social media thing. It's like the one thing that annoys me the most is when they try to look for solutions. And do you know who Trevor Moad was?
No.
Okay, he wrote a book. Trevor Moad was Russell. Uh, oh my gosh, what am I? Denver Broncos QB, Russell.
Oh,
My,
yeah, he was at Seattle. Now he's at
yeah.
Denver. Yeah,
Anyways, he
won a
was
Super
his.
Bowl.
Yeah, yes, he was his performance coach. And he was at IMG for 15 years, and he wrote a book called "It Takes What It Takes." And in it, he has his like 5 things that you should really stop trying to do. And one of them is, one of the things in the top 5 is be very selective on what you consume, who you listen to, what you consume on TV and on the internet. Because invariably, right, it's like he says other things like, don't say stupid crap out loud to yourself, right? Negative self-talk. Be very careful on who you're listening to in your ears.
Hmm.
And that is something I have these I have a bunch of notes I've taken from that, and he talks about this. I think he uses this word most amazingly when you're talking about like how these kids have to try and get negative thoughts out of their head, because negative thoughts are 70 times more powerful than any other kind of any other thought. And he says, when you privilege the past, because the past is not predictive, right? So I love that where he says you privilege it. You're actually giving the past privilege in your headspace.
Hmm.
And I think that's so amazing, because if you privilege the past and allow those thoughts to settle in, they're 70 times more powerful, and you can't get rid of them before the next thing you have to do. So the next shot, or the next the next putt. And he really talks about it, and so that I utilize those 5 things that he talks about, as well as some of these other great quotes in his book, because they're so apparent. And I mean, really, honestly and truly, if you just go and consume all this stuff on YouTube, you will be confused, you will ruin yourself, and it totally takes away from the voices in your head, because you need only one, and that's me,
Hmm.
right? And there's a reason why we're working together. If there's something that you want to bring to my attention and we can discuss it, I'm totally open to that. But I really try to get them to just not consume golf swings on YouTube, and that's hard.
Yeah, you got to be very. It's like you and I can watch things. I mean, we have 30 years of experience in golf, or more, and
Or
and
more.
we can sit there and digest what can we utilize from what's being discussed in this conversation, or what this other coach or somebody is trying to
Sure.
explain, and say, yeah, I don't really agree with that. That wouldn't work for this situation, but it might work for this. I'll try it next time I'm out on the lesson tier. This might work, but a young mind, they're like a sponge. They're going to soak up everything, and pretty soon they might get intoxicated from the wrong information, and now that sets them down a path for 3 months or even a season that they just went sideways,
Right.
and infected everything that you've been working with them on.
I mean, it's a hot button, right? I mean, you like, why are you listening to this stuff, and what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Is that not a detour off your roadmap? Is that
Hmm.
not like, how do we not stay in the lane, keep our head down, and keep working towards your goal. There are so many distractions, right? And I
Yeah,
mean, that's invariably.
you can tell them, look, I have this road for you pathed out. If you want to go through the woods and take a machete and hack all the shit out of the way and work 10 times harder to get up there, then you go ahead and knock yourself out. I'll
You
meet you
got it.
about halfway and you're going to be worn out.
Right, exactly. And that machete is gonna be real dull real quick.
Yes.
It's yeah, no, they it's just, oh my gosh, it's so it's just, you sit there and you want to go, I told you. Like, did you not? You gotta like, and that, I love it when I can do that with them, because I'm like, did you not see that coming? And they're like, yeah, sorry, I should, yeah, facts. Well, it's like something you gotta just let them go, right? Because it's like, yeah, okay, go figure that out, and you know what? When you're done and you're exhausted, like you just said, come back and we'll resharpen the sword and go down the road that you don't have to use it as much.
Yep. Yeah, one thing I have to ask you about, especially with juniors, and because the amount of data is overwhelming on the answer to this question, and I mean it goes back decades, if not a century. I think the Bulgarians in the 1920s were studying periodization and
Hmm.
kids in sports, and then it went to the Russians, I think, through the 40s and 50s and 60s, and obviously it's the rest of the world has it now. But that specialization early versus late. So generalizing early versus specializing early. And I think it's, by the time a kid is in his mid-teens, when it's the time that they need to
14.
make the decision. Yeah.
Hmm.
Why do you think it is that parents or kids want to? I mean, I have the idea on why they want to specialize. They want that success, and
Hmm.
maybe they want it now, especially in today's give it to me now. I can binge watch. I can get something in 24 hours shipped. I don't have to leave the
Ooh.
sofa. But as far as it still an issue in junior golf that kids and or parents want them specializing too soon, even though there's this Himalayan Mount Everest of data that says this is what you should not be doing.
You know what? I think I will be honest with you. I think it's a combination of a couple things. In Sport Canada and here in we have amazing data on the effects of specialization too soon and stuff like that. And I mean, I mean, Jack was talking about how he played football, basketball, baseball,
Mm-hmm.
before he even picked up golf. And when he was a young kid, and he could have played basketball for Ohio State, which is really kind of interesting. Um, and so when you think about that from that standpoint of specialization, um, I think it's a combination of seeing certain cultures specialize and do it for hours, and have a mentality that is, if I do more, more is better, and if I do even more, more is better. And they produce success, but they produce injuries, and
Yeah.
that stuff doesn't get reported, and burnout. Um, but when you have centuries of belief that that is what you need to do, it's hard to break that. So I think we get in our comparison that if these people are coming to compete and they're beating all of us, we need to be better sooner, faster, because it's important that we specialize, and that way you can be more successful. When we all know that play more sport, do more things, you will be fine. Take a break, for crying out loud, and enjoy something. I I have two sisters. Their parents are fantastic. One is 8, one is 11. They are giraffes. Like the 11-year-old is literally a giraffe. She is, every time I see her, like almost on a weekly, I think she's gotten taller. Like, her parents are tall. Her parents are 5'8" and 6 feet, and they're Croatian, and so they've got the good bloodline. But like, honestly, so they're doing martial arts, right? And they do their golf, right? But they also do things with their family a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a life, and it's super important, because if you are single siding this specialization, and I will make sure that they have to do more things, because it's just going to be better. I have a young lady who's now going to Texas A&M. When she was younger, she did track and field sprinting, She played soccer, then she played basketball, and she was by far one of the fastest runners like in my academy. Like she was so fast. And I know that helped with her ability. Like she's always been an amazing short game, putting, all that stuff. And I know that that's what's helped her. Now she's 5'10" and smashes it, right? And and I've seen the other way. I've seen where people have only done one thing, and they're injured.
Hmm.
There's a young lady that I know that is she's only done golf, and she is injured. I have another young girl who did a lot of badminton, and some volleyball, and now that she's 15, turning 16, she is, just in golf, and it's like she did that as she was turning 14, and but she played volleyball and badminton. Totally okay. I mean, I played everything growing up. I didn't pick up golf till I was in college, and I played basketball. Was my primary sport, but I threw javelin, I did volleyball, I did soccer, and I know because I did all those sports. Like this isn't a bragging stuff, but like golf, I was never really horrible. I could always put club to ball. Sure, I might shoot 90 or whatever, 90 or 100 or whatever when I started, but I got real quick, real fast. And it wasn't because I was like I was like getting a lot of instruction, because I didn't. It was more about adaptability as an athlete, you know to become a good golfer. And that, you see that in a lot of the hockey players that I coach now that have, because of COVID and stuff, they switch into golf. And I mean, they're, because they've been playing hockey and doing other sports and stuff, they can pick up this golf really quickly. So yeah, no specialization. If they do it too soon, I really try to dissuade it, and make it apparent, because it's just super easy to understand. John O'Sullivan's Changing the Game project, his Changing the Game book was something I read 10 years ago. And it was such a good book. I bought copies and gave them to my parents, because, you need to see it from that specialization standpoint, as well as how you can be as a parent, a sport, a really good sport parent.
Hmm.
So no, it's rampant, unfortunately, but I think it's a combination of a little bit of wanting to compete at the highest level and you don't want other people to be better than you, because you think that they've been doing it this way for so long, but they don't really see that that way is the quickest way to burnout.
Yeah, and you brought up a very important point that I was guilty of, and I think a lot of guys that played when I was playing are probably guilty of it as well. As coming through the '90s, early 2000s, you that mentality was still there that the more I practice, the better I'll be. And then the we're going to beat up Tiger a lot today. Not beat him up, but use we're going to use him extensively. But the stories of him hitting balls in rainstorms and everything at Stanford. Conrad Ray, I think, told me, he said that was bullshit. He said we were inside playing Nintendo and Game Station, um, but I was listening recently to Peter Attia, The Drive, and one of
Okay.
your Canadian friends, Dr. Stu McGill, was on there, and
Okay.
I found it very, very fascinating where he was talking about you can't do too much and you can't do too little. There's a sweet spot in between where and he was talking mostly about like a squat or deadlift or training or things that are going to put excess strain on the back, which golf would fall exactly into, that you're putting excess strain on the back even
Mhm.
as a young kid. And if you do that repetitively only for a certain amount of years, something's going to give at some point. I don't care how efficient and good your swing is. You cannot torque a back asymmetrically that often and at speeds that these kids are starting to swing at by the time they get to late teens and early 20s, and not expect something to go crooked. So but getting that through to people in today's world in particular, that's kind of where that question's always been there, but it's getting even more pronounced in today's world with juniors. Is you need to be well-rounded. One, to develop all your systems. Two, physically. And three, it's going to help you in your coordination and your improvement better later on as you progress in your career. Because golf is not a game for a season or 5 seasons. It's a game hopefully you're going to play for a lifetime. If you don't make it to the level you want to, you're still going to play with
Mhm.
your friends and your kids and your grandkids. So let's look at it that way, instead of just saying, let me hit 500 to 1,000 balls a day for the next 4 or 5 years, and I'm going to continue. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to wear out.
No,
You're a human
you
being.
need to take a break. And that was something, like, I have two boys that will literally just not come off a golf course. Like, give them the right facility, they will literally practice all day long. That's all fine and dandy, but like go putt, go chip, go hit bunker shots, take a break, have some lunch, right? Go back out, play 9 holes, go back. Like all those swings are adding up. You need to have a day off. Like it's funny. I remember saying to one of my guys, I said, "Hey, what have you done that's not golf related since you've been home?" And this is like a month later, and when he got home, he goes, "Nothing." I said, "Do you not want to like go to a movie, like have a night off, go hang out with some friends, just no." Like, you need to. Do I? I said, "You do." Because it's like you can't always be thinking, what about my golf swing? What about my move? Am I going fast enough? Your anxiety level and worry is just going to keep going through the roof. You need to have that decompression. Like, you know, I know growing up myself in Toronto, like I didn't play basketball 24/7. I played it a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I would go out with my friends. I would go, I would hang. I wouldn't go do things that were like offside, but I'd hang out with my friends and have decompression and all that stuff. I wouldn't be like constantly like needing the fact that I thought that because you know why? I think it ties right back to what you said is they're all looking at their phones going, "Oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. This guy's amazing." Like, right? And and like think I gotta beat him, or I gotta be as good as him.
Yeah, they want to fast track it.
They want to fast track it. Exactly, right? Right? Give me 1 second. I have a little message here. I have to parent asking me a question. Sorry, I know that's bad faux pas on a podcast here, but it's like sorry. Um oh, no.
Well, it's a good segue. As you're talking to a parent, I'll let you finish, and I've got a question that is
Yep.
very important, very very dear to you, but very important. And you had a blog post on this, and I highly advise everyone to go to your website. Obviously, we'll have links to all that in the summary. You had a very good blog post about acknowledging your ADHD, and we were talking about that in the pre-show on how it is, what you did, how you found out, first of all, and kids and that might have that are always led to believe, whether it was an outside influence or they self-belief, that they are not good enough, or they're bad, or they can't accomplish anything. But you go of someone who went through that, and someone who can now help kids with that. I think that's an exceptional thing, and you're doing a lot of great things with it. So can you speak to that? I know that's a lot to unpack. And the
I'll
podcasting world,
try.
you're
I'll
never
do a
supposed,
little.
yeah,
I'll crib note it. Um,
you're never supposed to ask multiple questions in one, and I did, but
that's
uh,
okay. So I remember growing up, my parents used to always say to people, "Keep them away from red dye and chocolate," which was kind of funny, right? Neurodiversity. It's the kind of the catchphrase now that encompasses ADHD, ADD, Asperger's, schizophrenia, and bipolar. Um, it is, it's so funny if you listen to the words. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and you lose those two D words are deficit and disorder. When in actual fact, it's my superpower, and I know that's a lot of people's superpower. Justin Timberlake, Will Smith, Michael Phelps. I mean,
Michael
to name a
Jordan.
few. Michael Jordan, to name a few, right? Um, Coach Doug. But the really interesting thing here is that 39, I was in my son's psychologist's office, and he goes, "Have you ever been diagnosed by ADHD?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, here, let's do a test." So we did a test. There were 16 questions. I said, "Hey, how am I doing?" He goes, "Trust me." You have ADHD, right? And I was like, and he was an expert, right, on this stuff, and so it was really interesting. It explained a whole lot of things, right? It explains why athletics were my dopamine, and why it was my coping strategies through high school, right? It was why high level of activity allowed me to really be creative and thought provoking and stuff, and then I I got into this, and then I finally got some medication, and it gave me clarity on the golf course. I could actually think, and but what it got me thinking about is why I've always been so great and connected with younger people, and why I've been able to be creative in terms of like coaching them and coming up with games or coming up with ideas, and like really really figure this out. And so we're a lot of kids, and I relayed a story about being with a kid one day where I was running a camp, and one of my leaders, coaches, was really having a hard time with this young guy. He couldn't relate to him, and he thought he was a troublemaker and all that stuff. And I took the kid with me on a cart ride, and we were going down a hill, and I'm just talking to him. I'm like, "Hey, do you finish people's sentences?" He goes, "All the time." I go, and this kid's, like going into grade 7, and I said, "Do you figure do you know what your teacher's going to say before they finish saying it?" And he goes, "Yes, all the time." I said, "Your brain's just working way faster than everybody else's, right?" And he looks at me, Pete. He looks at me and he goes, with tears in his eyes, he looks at me and he goes, "No, it's not. I'm stupid. I'm a dummy. I almost failed grade 6." And this is what this young man thought of himself, because he's always had been told, sit down, always been, stop interrupting, don't do this, don't do that. Rather than getting help, he was being told all these negative things, and his self, like what he thought of himself, broke my heart. And I finally said to myself, I said, I have to be not an advocate or, standing on my soapbox and all this stuff, but I have to get my coaches to understand who they're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have an advantage having ADHD, understanding what it's like to work with kids with ADHD, and how to help them. Structure, right, is essential to somebody with ADHD. You got to have it systematic. I can go from 1, 2, I have it written out in front of me. I am a high efficient working machine. If I don't have it structured, talk to my wife. That'd be a whole other podcast. But it's super important to understand that kids like this work differently, and you have to kind of figure that out. Some parents don't even realize their kids may have it. They may think they're flighty. Girls are the least diagnosed in the whole entire world because they think that girls are just, they're just flighty and all this stuff. When in actual fact, they get help. It's so much important to them. And it's help to being identified, to help them learn better, to help them understand who they are. And it's like 75% of it's kind of funny because 75% of life, I think I saw this stat, that people who are on death row or people who are life sentences in prisons have ADHD. Because what happens is they have impulsivity, and the impulsivity makes them react. Typically they'll do something, and then why they're in prison or something is because they've impulsively have done something and killed somebody or done something, and it's not logical thought. Or other things like, I can't hold a job, I can't, I have another dependency, I have a drug addiction, I have that. But the thing is you get these kids at their infancy, and if you can be a better coach from the standpoint of understanding how they are.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they hyper? Why are they constantly fidgeting with the putter? Why do they want to hit putters all the time? If you get them out there and structure it that they have 10 minutes to do this, 10 minutes to do that, 10 minutes to do this, your practice now is absolutely efficient. If you're all over the map and you don't really have structure, well, they're going to be the same way. And that is a whole, like, in and of itself, it's just trying to understand and be patient, because I know exactly. I have this wonderful young man who I just started working with, and self-admitted me he has ADHD, and he thought he was kind of dumb, and I had to give him the same speech. You're not. You're not at all. You just need to have an understanding of how to work with this better, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
why he's pretty good on the golf course, because he can hyper focus. Bubba Watson, hyper focus, boom, right? Get out there and really get into the zone, and everything else blurs. So it goes without saying that there's so many different things we could do as coaches to be better for our kids that come to us, that you may think that they're super busy or super destructive and super disruptive. Sorry, not destructive, disruptive and not focused. Well, how about you try changing it up, and why don't you have it all written out for them? Why don't you have that they come in, this is their whole schedule for their practice or their lesson. We're going to do 10 minutes of this, we're going to do 10 minutes of that, we're going to do 10 minutes of this. And see what happens. See if it starts changing for you. Because I guarantee you, if you give it a little bit more structure, and see, this is why when they're at school, if they're sitting on something and the teacher's talking too much, they get fidgety, they draw,
Get bored.
doodle. I remember
Completely
doodling
bored.
right, 100%, because the brain is way too fast.
Mm-hmm.
Their brains are going way too quick, and they've already finished it. And they'd be much better off with just getting a little tidbit of it, giving it something to them, and letting them figure it out. And a lot of the times, and getting the help or the guidance so it allows them to figure it out. I remember like doing a math test and my feet are going like crazy. I'm trying to do it right because I was like, I, I had a certain amount of time that I had to get this done. I couldn't do it in that amount of time. Like it's oh, there's so much to talk about on this, but it's like,
geez, maybe I have it because the SAT test, I knew I couldn't get all the answers. I'm sitting there working out the problems. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to run out of time. And it's like, it used to drive me crazy on
it
tests.
does. Like trying, like, come up with a great idea. Oh, okay. So how do I finish it? Oh man. It's like my wife said, I'll go downstairs to change a light bulb, and come back upstairs 10 minutes later. I got the light bulb in my pocket and I started 3 other jobs. Like it's but when I take a medication every day. I take it by Fenton, and what it does for me, it's the idea machine. So basically I take it about an hour and a half in after taking it from about 9 to say 5 o'clock. I'm a high efficient working machine because what it does is speed, right? So your brain's working around. The speed makes it goes faster, so you can hyper focus. It's why it's banned. It's why drugs are banned on the PGA Tour, right? So you can't take any medication on the PGA Tour because you know it helps you with focus. So it's one of those things that um, you know I really think that as a coach, from coaching standpoint, I think if you're just a little bit more understanding or patient, or if anybody has any questions about this, by all means reach out, because I can talk about this stuff like all day long. I'd be more than happy to help you understand how to work with kids like this, because I'm not saying I'm an expert that way, but I definitely know from experience, how to be better.
Yeah, so, someone who has it and someone who's worked with kids with it, I would say you're an expert at it.
It's kind of neat because my friend Brad would always ask me, well, like, what do you think about this? Or like, or is this your ADHD? And it's like, well, this is my ADHD. And like, when you say this to me, this is what happens because you send me down a highway. And like, it's interesting because he wanted to know a little bit more about it, right? So it's like he goes, we're really like, because for people who don't have it, they don't understand what it's like to really have, like we poke fun, right? Like squirrel, right? Like right?
You had that in your
From
article.
it's Doug, the dog from Up, right? I mean, it's like, hi, my name's Doug. Squirrel, right? It's like all the time, but it's not. It's the fact that it's like, okay, so how do you stay focused on a golf course when your brain in between shots? I mean, you're playing for 17 minutes, literally for a 4 hour round of golf. You're hitting shots for 17 minutes. All the extra time, how are you staying focused, or what gets you back into that spot to get you focused on the golf course so you can play your best, right? And it's I mean, there's some great ways to go about doing it, but it's seriously, I would love to have somebody who, I wish you could like plug them into an ADHD brain, have them live in a day in my shoes or somebody else's shoes for that matter, and see how their brain how they would actually, what they would think about it. Because I think it might open up a lot of eyes about what we have to deal with. And I'm not
Maybe I
saying
need
that
to
from
do
I'm
this.
not saying that, and I'm not trying to say that as an excuse, right? And that's not something I've ever wanted to use. I'm not using it as a crutch. I'm saying it's actually a superpower. You just may not know how to use it.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of understanding, like, look, it's okay to say that you have it, right? And but you don't, it's not a crutch. It's not an excuse for you to use it, right? It's, you have it, but use it to your advantage. My wife always holds me accountable. She goes, "You can't use that as an excuse." I was like, "Yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm saying, like, I'm like, you got to understand, after 35 years, honey, that you know what this looks like, right? I mean, it's not like I kind of turn it on, turn it off. So it's hilarious, man.
Maybe I do have it. The first year I played, so this would be about 2000. I had a little injury, so I was training there's a big a medical facility over in Beaufort, and that Hell South, before they had their issues financially, was in charge of the physical area, physical fitness and rehabilitation. And through the PGA in America, we were able to use that facility without charge. So I called them up and they said, yeah, come on over. And they got me going right. But on the second floor, I mean, there was orthopedics, there was everything in this building, in this medical plaza. And on the second floor, there was a psychologist who had some friends who were in athletics, and they had developed a program where they put the electrodes and all that stuff all over your head, and they could measure your ability to get into the zone. So they said, well,
Wow.
you're playing pro golf. Do you mind if as we learn how to use this technology, can you be a test dummy, basically, is what
Yeah,
it
no,
was.
no,
He
no,
asked me to do.
guinea pig for sure.
Yes. And I said, yeah, I'll check it out. It should be interesting. So I said, okay, here, we're going to test you, see how well you get in the zone. And there was this blip on the screen, and you had to try to focus on it to keep it going as straight as you possibly could. And then if it would deviate, that means you were slipping out of the zone, and then you try to bring it back and so on. And I mean, I think it lasted about, you did 5 tests of about 60 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds each. Maybe it was a minute, and you worked up to a minute and a half. And I said, so how'd I do? And he said, you maxed it out. He goes, you are in 99.9 percentile because it does not go to 100. You are in the top of the elite Olympic athletes, because the Olympics were in Atlanta about that time. And he said, you were in the top echelon of all athletes on the planet. I said, okay. He goes, now let's test you getting out of the zone. So now I'm thinking, okay, I'm in the top. I'm going to knock this one out of the park. So we go through getting yourself out of the zone. And I'm killing it. I can't wait to hear what he says. So we get done with the test. He said, we started, didn't you? You're supposed to get out of the zone. I said, yeah, I did. He said, not even close. He said, you never took yourself out more than a percent or two, which
What? Wow.
correlated to me. My rounds when I was playing then, I would play good for usually 1, 2, maybe 3 rounds in a row. And then I'd have a blow up round because my brain was fried. It could not stay at that level the entire time because I could not shut it off. So I would have it on go.
Exhausted.
So focused. Yes. And that's the last year I went to Q school was 05. I'll never forget. I think I'm 7, 8 under going into the third round. I got it on the 9th hole at Jennings Mill for another birdie. I think I was even leading 10, 11 under at that time. And I'm looking at everything was so finite. I could see lines like it was a fine pencil. And I'm looking at this putt, and all of a sudden it has a little waver like the old TVs used to have, just a bit of static.
Come on.
I'm like, that's odd. By the 12th hole, I was shot.
No.
I went from 4 under that round. I limped into even I shot 4 over on the back, and the next day I shot 77 and I missed.
No.
And that was more or less end of my playing career, but I was able to do that, but I could never shut it off.
Wow. And you know what? And that makes me think a lot about, like as you're relating this story, right? What's my brain doing? I'm thinking about all my kids I coach, and I'm thinking about anybody who's like that, right? Because I do have a couple that can't shut it off. And it's, like, wow, that's
But I also have a
crazy.
default just through following Tony Robbins stuff. Jason and I both follow his stuff a lot. And I know Jason does a lot of Jim Rohn, but it clicked one day. I'm watching, I'd heard Tony Robbins, and we grew up, we were in high school when he came out, and I'm like, okay, this guy's a motivation. I'm not buying into that stuff. You go out, you grind through it, and you get better. So I finally listened to him on Tim Ferriss one day, and I was blown away. So I watched the documentary that was on him, I'm Not Your Guru. And he asked a question to one of the ladies, I think, in the audience. And he said, I'll ask you 2 questions, and you're going to know the answer within seconds of me asking. You don't even have to answer it to me. He said, which of your parents' attention did you seek more? And of course, most people know the answer immediately. And then he said, the second one is, what did you have to do or who did you have to become to get that attention? And he said that forms a child's belief system when they don't even know what is happening.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And so for me, I mean, it dawned on me that I always thought I had to be perfect. And so here I am, I can max out the focus. And my entire life up until I played pro golf, and I was in my late 20s, so 20 some years, I thought I had to be perfect in my whole life, not even knowing I'm pushing to that. And then I got to a point where I would just burn myself out, and I never learned or had an understanding of how to back off and how to shut it off.
Wow.
And it took me that long to sort that out. But it was like an epiphany for me.
Well, that you just mentioning that just kind of little pivotal in the back of my head there about who that was and stuff, right? My mom was my biggest fan. My dad was the one that was hardest for me to, and didn't tell me he was proud of me as a golf pro until like maybe now 10 years before he passed away. And always trying to seek that out, right? And then just in the last, but it's funny, had the best years in the last 10, right? Where I was very epiphanal, very much like, content, right? But it's kind of funny. It correlated with my coaching. Wasn't trying to impress him by having a job that paid me well. It was like, now I'm doing a job for me, and it's, I'm not worrying about it paying me well or impressing you and stuff. And it's, wow,
that's fulfillment.
Yeah, it's very familiar. So, I
It,
mean, yeah, no, I can, and I know that for a fact is that pleasing people is something that, my brain always, feels like it's got to do, right? And you got to really understand. Again, my friend Jay really got me to understand that, you know what? There are the people that are always going to love you, the people that do really like you, and then the people that just don't like you. And I think at times we often spend more energy and more time trying to convince those people that maybe you don't that don't like us to really like us
mhm.
because we want them to like us, right? And it's so hard, and it goes with golf too, right? I mean, we want those coaches to like us, but maybe they just don't like us, and the players want to go play for a school, but maybe they just don't think it's a good fit, and you have to wrap your head around all that stuff and then help these young people figure that out. And as a coach, when you're trying to deal with all your stuff and then turn around and help these people deal with theirs, it's often a balancing act.
Yeah, my dad, by the time I was in my late 20s or when I was playing, he would tell me, I think after some self-reflection on his own, that he would apologize for pushing me too hard as a kid because he was the one I was trying to be perfect for. I mean,
Right.
specifically remember him saying, you got to get all A's. And just by the time I was about 9 or 10 years old, I just basically shut down. I'm not doing shit because I can't do this on a daily basis. But he would apologize, and I would say, "What? I don't understand what he's apologizing for." It took me a few more years to realize what he was talking about, pushing too hard. He said, maybe,
Yeah. My dad
yeah.
didn't ever really push me that hard. It was almost, but it was born out of the fact of his upbringing. When I look back at it, and the really interesting part was that my dad's wife told me after my dad passed away that when he was a principal that his because I knew I got my athleticism from my mom and my dad I wasn't sure what I got, but it was really funny because when she starts telling me this that as a principal his his staff loved working for him. He really knew his kids in his school and that his peers really respected him. I went, "Whoa."
Mm,
I went, "Whoa." And that was because he did his job. He made people feel, want to work for him because he treated them with respect. And then all the kids really enjoyed him as the principal because he really knew who the kids were. And I was just like, "Wow. Okay. Why didn't you tell me this before?" Right? It's like now it all comes together, and I'm like, Thanks, Dad." And it's
mhm.
it's really cool. I feel like honestly, I feel so very blessed to even have the opportunity to coach these kids. I was talking to my very best friend yesterday, and we were talking. He was asking me what's coming up, and I was kind of telling him some of the things that's going on. And he goes, when you started this, but you had no idea you'd be where you are today and doing what you're doing. He goes, from my standpoint, it's really cool to watch because he's been my childhood friend since I was 15 and his best man at my wedding. And he goes, to watch you, watch you build this and grow and see where you're going. It's really cool to watch my best friend do this. And I said, bro, you're gonna start making me cry. It's like it's one of these things, right? And it's like, but it's so very true. I am so very blessed, and I mean, to be on your podcast is one thing, and I'm so very thankful for that. It's just to share, share what I hope people can glean off of in a podcast like this to help them get better as coaches, as people, as parents, as individuals. um I just get like goosebumps with this stuff because it's kind of like God's work on helping me help people get better, and I know that's why I've been put on this planet, and sharing this and sharing my story and some of the things that I get to experience is pretty awesome. So
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it's an awesome story. And I just met you, what, a month and a half ago, but as I
yeah,
was reading on it, I said, This has got to be." I mean, outside of the teaching and the kids stuff, you have more to the story than there, which is, and we can go on for hours about that. But
we could
uh,
we could.
but
I
it'll
unfortunately have some coaching to do, so I
well,
I wish we could sit here and talk more.
it'll leave the door open for episode 2.
That would be great.
Do you have a
That would be
few
really
minutes? We could do emergency 9.
Sure. Let's do an
Okay.
emergency 9.
Because this is not that the rest wasn't fun, but this is always well, I should say interesting, fun part. So the first and last question, just about everybody gets. It's the same. Just kind of keep some continuity to it. Everything in between changes. So I have to keep everyone on their toes a little bit. So,
All right.
so you're Canadian. You'd be in the President's Cup. So you let's say you play in some sections events, have a great year. You get a tour. You win the Canadian Open, and they say, "Hey, we're going to pick you for the President's Cup team. Not only you're a great player, but we really like you, being a lot of enthusiasm." you're going to walk up to the first tee. What song are you going to have them blaring over the speaker system?
I'm gonna have probably one of my favorite rap songs from the 80s is Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, The Show. Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, The Show. Excuse me, Dougie. Excuse me, Dougie. Excuse me, Dougie Fresh. You're on. On. There you go.
Okay. I know you're a very big reader. You like a lot of books. You're a voracious reader. What book is on your nightstand at present?
Oh boy. The book I have right now on my nightstand is I'm rereading Life's Golden Ticket by Brendan Burchard.
Cool.
Great book on getting a second chance.
Good. Cool. Hollywood comes to you, said, we watch your career. You got a fantastic story. We're going to make a movie about your life, and we'll let you cast anybody you want to play you. Who are you gonna put in your what actor?
Who am I going to put in me?
Yep.
Jason Bateman.
Very cool. Most people go right to Matt Damon or Brad Pitt or George Clooney. So nice to hear a different answer on that.
Jay Bay, mainly from the standpoint is he's my wife's favorite actor, but he's born on my wife's birthday, but also like him and my wife share the same birthday, but he's also so dynamic. Like he can do, I mean, dude, Ozark is like, he's just,
I gotta watch it. Everyone's told me about that.
Bro, you gotta watch Ozark. He's brilliant in it. So anyways, I would love that guy to play me. Yes.
Okay. Done. I'll call my contacts and get it done.
Great. Jay Bay, let's go.
You're coaching Mount Rushmore. Who would be your 4 coaches on Mount Rushmore?
Oh, my coaching oh, wonderful. My college basketball coach, Mike Cates. He would be 1. Butch Harmon, I think, would be 2. Number 3, from a coaching standpoint, actually from somebody I've learned from, and he was a soccer coach, is John O'Sullivan. I really like John. He's brilliant and has just done so much for coaching and changing the game project. And 4, that would be really good. My cousin Ann Carroll. She coached the women's national squad and played at Florida State. She's a big mentor for me, and I love her to death, and I think she would be up there.
Very cool. Let's see. If you could put any chain or restaurant in your kitchen, what one are you going to put in there?
Anything that Guy Fieri does.
That's a very good one, because that dude can do some serious cooking.
He can. Him or Maddie Matheson, who's on the Bear.
Right.
You got to watch that. He's Canadian. He's pretty awesome.
If you could sit in a golf cart and talk to anybody in history for 4 hours, who's it going to be?
That's a great question. Sean Connery.
Oh, cool one. That's a cool answer.
Yeah. Like, not from the standpoint that he was so amazing as James Bond, and that's how he's remembered as an actor and so on and so forth. I've just always felt he is just such an amazing individual.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, that's just my thought.
Very cool individual, too.
Yeah.
Let's see, just a couple more. If you could put any emoji stamp on your golf club, what are you putting on there?
Crazy face.
Why does that not surprise me?
Crazy. Yeah, the tongue hanging out, the eyes kind of googly. Yes, that's me.
2 more.
Face palm.
Favorite golf movie?
Oh, greatest game ever played. Oh, yeah, the greatest game has ever played, I think, is my favorite golf movie, next to Happy Gilmore.
Right.
You're going to get it now, Bobby.
And last one. In your opinion, as far as golfers are concerned, who's the GOAT?
Oh, boy. It's Tiger. Close second is Jack, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tiger because he's transcended a sport. Transcended a sport. He changed the sport forever in more ways than anybody could ever think.
Yeah, I would agree. There's no doubt about that. He's very much as good a player as Nicklaus, or the argument is made both ways, but it had the effect of an Arnold Palmer. It's kind of a combo of both.
Right.
I've gone over my time. I told you 60 to 90 minutes, and we've gone way over, but I can't thank you enough. I very much enjoyed it. I think a lot of people are going to take a lot from this, especially parents and kids. Because I
Pete,
can't thank you for coming.
from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for this wonderful chat. Again, like I said before, it's an honor to share my story and my little bit of knowledge that I have, and I commend you. Your podcast is outstanding. You've had some fantastic people on this. I still feel very blessed to be a part of it, and I thank you. And you know what? I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to put you on schedule. Just hang out for a minute, and thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.